Hey everybody, I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to a word from the Word. And today that word is escape. Escape. Now, as we're continuing on in Isaiah, and we've talked about how God's judgment and wrath was going to be poured out on these nations. And remember, even as he's using the Assyrians as a tool in his hand, and the Assyrians still think that it's all because of them, but God has other plans. He's using them, but he is allowing them this victory, but he still holds everything in control, everything in his hand. So we talked about yesterday that he has a plan and he will execute it. And here's the thing, that there's so many that think that they will escape. Now today in Isaiah chapter 15, you'll see that he is dealing with the nation of Moab, or the Moabites. Now these are the descendants of Lot. So you really think about being what is that, Abraham's nephew, being kin to him, and to think about the kind of being family of the Jews, that you would think that they would get along, but that is far from the case. They are actually enemies of Israel. And here it seems as though you'll see that God is using the Assyrians to take care of the Moabites as well. And even those that escape, right? So even those that think that they will escape some of it, well, God has other things in mind. And that's really the idea that we need to remember, that when God sets a plan, as we talked about yesterday, that he executes, no one can escape. See, there's not, there seems to be this misunderstanding in our culture today that people can skate by and that they won't have to answer to God. No, there is no escape. We're all going to stand before God, every single one of us. So if you've accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, then he sees Christ and you are covered by his blood. But if you're not, then he sees you, and he sees you in your sin, and he must punish it. And there is no escape. You say, well, look, I feel like I'm escaping now and I'm getting away with everything. And believers that are listening and joining us today, you may be thinking, well, look, there's plenty of not just sinners, like believers who have backslidden. That's not what I'm talking about. But there's some that are just pure evil, and they seem to be doing just fine. Seems like they've gotten away with a lot of things. Well, there is no escape with the Lord. So today, Isaiah chapter 15, just look at the last verse, verse 9, because he says, for the waters of Diamond will be full of blood, because I will bring more upon Diamond, lines upon him who escapes from Moab, and on the remnant of the land. So he says, even those that think they will escape, he says lions will go after them. Now, a lot of times in kind of poetry and the writing that he's talking about, probably not talking about actual lions, but I'm going to tell you what, he could be, because God is in control. But usually this is talking about the fact that the Assyrians would find them out. Wherever they thought that they were going to escape, they were still going to be killed. I mean, even the fact that you would find any fresh water and it would be ruined by the amount of blood that's there. And that's even still, as we see throughout the literal things that were already, that were going to take place and be fulfilled within just a few years of this writing, of just a few years of the time that God gave the prophecy to Isaiah, and then to look ahead to knowing what the great tribulation will hold. It's everything is just a glimpse, a foreshadowing of what is to come. And so even then, let that be a foreshadowing and a reminder for us all that in the great tribulation there will be no escape. Right? You find out that through the tribulation that yes, it is possible for people to be saved, but it's much less likely to happen. But even those through the end, everyone will still face judgment. Again, believers, if you put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, then your judgment has already been poured out on, the wrath of God has already been poured out on Christ on the cross. So you're not escaping. It's that Jesus was that scapegoat for us. He was the one that took our punishment and took our sin upon himself. But for anyone, and even nations like this that would oppose God, there is no escape. And for nations today that decide to go against God, much like ours is doing right now. There is no escape. They're not going to be able to make their own rules with God. God is not sitting idly by. God is working his plan. And sometimes as believers, we struggle with what that plan may be. But we know, again, as we said yesterday, he's going to execute his plan perfectly. We are not to get in the way of it, but we are to follow in faithful obedience. But it also, I cannot look at as Isaiah and cannot look at prophecy about the end time and think about the things that are come without having that desire and that sadness and that heartbreak to know that we must share the gospel, that we must try to prevent as many as we can from having to experience the tribulation, much less have to experience an eternity in hell. Because from hell as well, there is no escape. Will you let it motivate you today? If you're not a believer today, would you ask the Lord to speak to you? Would you look into his word? Would you ask Jesus into your heart? Would you tell him you faithfully believe everything that's in his word and you promise to live your life for him because you know you're a sinner? You believe that you're a sinner. You will confess him as Lord because you know that you deserve hell, but you can gain heaven because of Christ. You can do that today. As believers, let this encourage us to know that there's no escape for the lost. So let us do everything we can to stand between them and the pits of hell, because there will be no escape. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.